My name is Sunana Chugani, and I am a PhD student at the University of Texas.
And I'm Vic Shivdasani. I'm a comedian, so she analyzes every little thing, and I can't take anything seriously.
So
and we're going to be your host for tonight.
Right. So today's event is organized by Infinite Love, which is a local non-profit organization. It's entirely volunteer-run, and it's devoted to serving and uplifting the Valley.
It was started on February 14, 2012, by 4 inspirational women. And 2 of these women are actually our mothers. So the reason that we're up here today is because our moms told us to.
So we're going to start off tonight's, actually, before I do that, on behalf of Infinite Love, we would like to thank the people who made this evening possible. Action 4 News, Doctors Hospital at Renaissance, Dr. Yada at Valley Heart Consultants, and Bert Ogden RGV. We would not be up here without your help, so sincerely thank you. We also wanted to say thank you to those in the media who helped us get the word out about this event. Your generosity truly is appreciated.
This is the 2nd speaking event our organization has hosted, and we are very excited about the 2 speakers that we have tonight. First, we have the amazing Nipun Mehta, the founder of Service Base. And then, of course, we have the phenomenal Elizabeth Gilbert. Are you ready to be inspired tonight? Make some noise, people. I think you guys can do a little bit better than that. There we go.
We're going to start tonight's event with a short video about the work that Infinite Love is doing in the Valley. Enjoy.
Infinite Love is
Empathy.
service,
dedication,
generosity,
compassion.
Infinite love to me is the word itself, love. It's an opportunity to experience that, to offer that.
Infinite Love has taught me more about myself. I learned to love myself. I learned to love everyone as they are, and it saved me because I was going through a hard time, and I realized that there's so much more to myself that I hadn't known.
Infinite Love just bridges the gap between all religions and color and gender. So we have people from all different walks of life, many different spiritual traditions, different paths, different backgrounds, all coming together to see each other as one, as brother and sister.
On a Wednesday night, you come at 7:30, and there's a time of just sharing, chatting with one another, getting to know some new people. There's always new people every Wednesday night, and so you get a chance to chat with them, or you can sit quietly and watch everybody interacting. Usually toward the end of that, there's a little inspirational talk or a video, something 10 or 15 minutes, just a little relaxing, inspirational time, and then we sit in a group and meditate.
Infinite Love has already started serving the community, reaching out to the cancer patients, reaching out to the homeless, and that's just the beginning. Also bringing in some really dynamic speakers, speakers such that we've never had here in the Valley, so it's really exciting. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. They have lots and lots planned to meet the emotional, the physical, the mental, the spiritual needs of our brothers and sisters in the community.
It feels so wonderful to see the smiles on the people's faces because they know that we're not there just to give out food or just to help them out a little, because they can see it that we love them.
Because it's not only about providing food or providing material needs, which is good, of course, but it's also they reach out and give so much love and emotional support, which is one of the objectives of this organization.
Be infinite love. Share your abundance.
Be infinite love. Share your time.
Be infinite love. Share your talent. What are you waiting for?
So as you can tell by the video, Infinite Love is devoted to serving our community. But there's another layer to our work. We believe that true and lasting change happens when we change ourselves on the inside. That is why we meditate together, and that is why we bring inspirational speakers to the Valley. Our opening speaker for tonight, Nipun Mehta, founded an organization called Service Space, which Infinite Love gets a lot of inspiration from. One of the things that Service Space believes is that by practicing small acts of generosity, it causes an inner transformation that makes you a more loving and giving person. This inner shift then ripples out and makes the world a better place. Before I call Nipun on stage, I would like to share a story of one of my inner transformations as a result of knowing Nipun and a result of knowing Service Space. Nipun often talks about conducting what he calls experiments. Just practice generosity, he says, and see what happens. And a powerful act of generosity, according to Service Space, is truly and deeply listening when someone is talking to you. So one day, I was at a dinner party with some friends that I hadn't seen in a really long time. I had gotten up to go to the restroom, and on my way back, I ran into a lady from work that I barely knew. She seemed like she wanted to catch up, but I really wanted to get back to my friends, and I had always heard that she was kind of a strange person. I was about to tear myself away when I remembered what Nipun said. So I decided to conduct an experiment. I had spoken to this lady in the past, but was never truly engaged in the conversation. So this time, I decided to give her my undivided attention and to listen with love, just to see what would happen. I couldn't believe how quickly the small talk disappeared. I saw her guard drop before my eyes. She told me how desperately she missed her daughter, who got married and moved away. She shared a secret about something difficult that was going on in her life. And she gave me such kind advice about how to take care of myself since I lived alone and away from my family. In her concern for her daughter, I saw my parents. In her eagerness to give advice that might help me in some way, I saw my grandparents. I realized that this woman, who others had told me was strange, was actually as amazing as the people I loved. I left the conversation blown away by how my simple intention to listen turned what would have been shallow pleasantries into a deep reminder about how alike we all are. She thanked me for the nice conversation, but I was the one who gained because of this inner shift. I realized that at the end of the day, we are more alike than we are different, and it takes love to break down our imaginary boundaries. Love and inner transformation are what Infinite Love and what Service Space are all about. Without further delay, please join me in welcoming Nipun Mehta on stage. As a courtesy to the speakers tonight, and as to your other audience members, we ask that you please not take pictures until the question and answer session at the end. Thank you very much. Please let's welcome Nipun again.
Yeah. Thank you. Whenever you get an invitation from a group that's named Infinite Love, you have to say yes. It's beautiful. I'm honored to be here. I want to talk to you about this new word, giftivism, and its 4 key mental shifts that it embodies. But before I do that, I want to share a little bit of my personal journey. Given that I'm sharing the stage with an illustrious speaker, I was thinking, if I had 3 words to describe my journey, what would those be? Give, pray, love, give, 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 what would it be? I was thinking, and as I was thinking, I remembered a talk I did a couple years ago, and it was precisely those 3 words. So I want to share those with you. The first one, as you might imagine, is, of course, give. A friend of mine was teaching a class, and he asked everyone in class, How can we be good? How can we be generous? And everyone had a lot of different ideas, and then this one fellow raises his hand and he says, I learned how to be good from my 5-year-old. And everyone's kind of looking at him, and he explains, he says, it was Christmas, we were in Mexico. I'd taken my son there, and I'd just given him gifts, midnight, the night before, on the 24th. And this is 25th morning, and there's a kid coming by from the nearby slums, and you just knew that he didn't have the kind of toys that my son had. So I look at my son, and I tell him, son, give him one of your toys. My son, of course, at first says, no, Dad, I don't want to do that. You know, but Dad looks at him in one of those vintage, you know, Lion King, Mufasa moment, and so, son. So the son's like, okay, he's a smart kid. He says, all right, I think I got to do this, but I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick my least favorite toy. So he picks his least favorite toy and is about to give it out, and Dad, now in a very profound Mufasa moment, says, son, not that one. Give him your favorite toy. And the son just starts crying. He says, there's no way, I just got this. I can't give this away. But Dad, in a compassionate yet stern way, is right there with him. The son decides to go and give the toy away. Now, as he's going out and he's coming back, the father is thinking, maybe I should appreciate him, maybe I should promise him, I'll get him another one, congratulate him for the act of goodness that he's done, act of kindness he's done. But much to his surprise, son comes back with a big smile on his face, looks his dad in the eye and says, Dad, that was amazing. Can I do it again? Can I do it again? It's a 5-year-old. He didn't need any sermons on generosity. He didn't need to learn about like what is the neurobiology of chemistry or of your brain when you're doing an act of kindness. He just knew intrinsically. And we're all wired in that way. So as we give, we realize that everything kind of snaps back into place inside you. It just feels right. And that's been my journey. That was the early part of my journey where I said, I just want to give. And I love giving. And it's a beautiful thing. I feel so connected. And as I gave more, I came to the second word, which was receive. This is my friend Arthur. He gives great hugs. But you cannot give a hug without receiving a hug. You cannot give without receiving. It's impossible to do that. First, you need to generate a kind of love. But even after you do that, even after that act, they actually measured at Harvard what happens in your brains when you go and give something to someone else. The same parts of your brain light up when you're actually going to go shopping and you go buy something for yourself. Same parts of the brain. So giving is very intrinsic to us, and we're receiving as we're giving. And so sometimes there's this tendency then to start giving and receiving, and you say, okay, I gave this much, I feel this much happier, and this is a good thing. But then comes the third stage, which is dance. I'm not going to dance in front of you. I'll leave that to Vic. He seems like he's a hip kind of guy, but this is my wife and I. In 2005, we went to India on a walking pilgrimage. And this is where I really learned dancing. Dancing in the sense that you don't keep track of giving and receiving. You just give. You just give for the love of it, and you just know that what goes around eventually will come around. And even if it doesn't come around, it's fine. Maybe I gave and I didn't receive as much, and maybe I gave little and I received a whole lot. It's okay, you're not keeping track. So in 2005, my wife and I went on a walking pilgrimage across India. We would walk south, and we would eat whatever food was offered and sleep whatever place was offered. It's a very humbling kind of an experiment that can turn your paradigms upside down. And I remember we were going through this one patch, and there wasn't enough water. And I was getting kind of worried. And this is super hot. I had a bandana on my forehead, and I had, it was probably 110, 120 degrees, and it gets hot, and there wasn't any water. So I was thinking about it. My wife was with me, and I'm like, how is this going to work out? Right then, I see an old woman in a hut. This grandma calls out and says, you guys look thirsty. Do you want water? I was like, yes. And so we go up, and she brings this little broken pot. And in some of these areas, you have to walk 4 or 5 hours to go and get this water. And she gives us water. Then she looks at us and says, you guys look hungry. Do you want some food? And I was like, look, there's a pilgrimage. You're not really supposed to ask. So I said, no. But I was like, no, something in between, And so she's getting us food. Now, while this grandma is serving us, the grandpa is sitting there, and he's chanting some names of some devotional names, and I'm not really sure how plugged in he is. And then he asked me a simple question. He's like, what are you guys doing? I said, well, we're going on this pilgrimage to purify ourselves, you know. And he says, oh, that's great. Where did you start from? And I said, we started from Ahmedabad, which is the name of a city nearby there. And he says, oh, Mehmedabad. And I said, no, not Mehmedabad. It's actually Ahmedabad. So he looks at us and he's like, yeah, that's what I said, Mehmedabad. And I'm like, okay, this grandpa cannot hear. So I said, no, it's Ahmedabad, 127 kilometers from here. And he looked at me, and in one line, completely flattened me. He says, oh, I see, then you're not on a pilgrimage. You're keeping track. And I was like, darn, if it was like 150 or 130, round number, I could have said approximately. It was like 127. I was keeping track. That's not a pilgrimage. You're trying to get ahead. You're trying to do something. You're trying to have an accomplishment on some ledger somewhere that I did this. But when you let go of that, then you start dancing. And that's when the real magic happens. So there was no word. How do you apply the spirit of dancing in the spirit of generosity and love to social change? There was no word for that. I mean, there is activism, but that didn't quite fit what we were talking about. Activism is me versus someone else. But then we said, this is about the 100%. This is about uplifting everybody. Practice of radically generous acts that change the world. And as we started looking into it, we looked at some of the giants of social change that we admired. People like Gandhi, people like Mother Teresa, Dalai Lama, Cesar Chavez, Nelson Mandela. You can see the whole list over there. There's so many of these people. None of them had this idea. They would always say, oppose the action, but not the person. The person is always way more than the individual action. Like Gandhi in South Africa, his chief opponent was this guy named General Smuts. And General Smuts, after losing to Gandhi, after a long, hard fight, writes Gandhi a letter, and he says, it was my honor. It was my honor to be your antagonist. What kind of an opponent is that? When your opponent says, it is my honor to be your opponent. It's a very different way of being. Gandhi was dancing. All these people were dancing. And it doesn't even take, you don't have to be giants of social change. You could be everyday people if you just manifest the spirit. I remember my buddy lives in an apartment complex, and they have very narrow parking spots. So one day, he kind of parked a little bit off, and so the guy next to him couldn't get in. But they also had kind of a history. So he comes down, and lo and behold, his windshield is completely smashed. And it's smashed with a rock, and the rock is lying right there. This guy comes down, father of a young daughter, comes down, and he is completely enraged. He says, how dare this guy do that? If he does this today, what's he going to do tomorrow? I'm going to take that rock and smash his window. So he takes up that rock with all this anger, and then he says, oh, but wait, maybe there's something to that giftivism thing, that generosity, love, but I just don't feel any love. Like, I'm just feeling anger. And he's like, no, drop it, you know. And he kind of drops it. He goes up to his house and he says, how can I rebound this back with more love? And he's thinking about it. He goes up to his house. In his house, there's some sweets. And so he takes those sweets. He says, no matter how hard it is for me to love this guy, I'm going to take those sweets and offer it to his house. He kind of knew exactly which household did this. So he goes up, and it's just one, he lives on the 3rd floor. This guy's on the 4th floor. So he goes up, and he said it took him 15 minutes to climb those stairs. 15 minutes, like, I really don't want to do this, I really don't. And he's like climbing up. And he goes up, it's hard for him to even make eye contact. And he leaves the sweets. Comes back down, and bit by bit, his anger subsides, and he's fine. 6 months later, knock on the door. It's someone from the apartment, not the same fellow, has an envelope. He says, someone in the apartment has given you this envelope. He opens it up. It's the exact same amount of money that it cost him to repair his windshield. It was that fellow. Now, if he would have broken his windshield, then that guy would have slashed his tires. He would have slashed his tires. All kinds of things would have happened. But not this. But it takes that man in that moment of anger and rage to rebound it back with love and compassion. That's the spirit of giftivism. So there are 4 key shifts that I want to share today around this idea of giftivism. The first is a shift from consumption to contribution. Real photo, young kid helping somebody else tie the shoelace. It's very natural for us. So this idea, we're kind of conditioned as consumers. What can I get? What can I get? What can I get? We build all our systems around it. But what if we flip it around and instead of opening each door and saying, what can I get? What if we open each door and say, what can I give? In every moment, we have the potential to do that. What if we did that? We forget. But we can be reminded. So we started a little experiment to remind us. Something that some of you might be aware of, smile cards. Smile cards is a game. You go out and do a small anonymous act of kindness for somebody, you leave a smile card behind. The smile card says somebody did a nice act for you, you don't know who, but you can't pay back, you pay forward. Don't let the change stop. So many times we receive so much and we let the change stop because we're just consumers. But we're not just consumers. We can be contributors as well. And in fact, I would say we're contributors first. So lots of people do lots of different things, right? There will be people who, of course, the classic example is pay toll for the guy behind you, right? You're going up and, you pay toll for the person behind you and you tell the attendant, hey, just give him a smile card. Now that person is just going to make their day for just a couple bucks, or if you're in California, $6 on the Golden Gate Bridge. But I'm told here, there are some places where you just put some change, But imagine the smile. Imagine you're in the receiving end of it, and you're like, wow, somebody took the time out to be thoughtful and to just make me smile. And that smile is probably going to be contagious, going to be a dinner table conversation. And then I'm going to go and pay forward and do something nice for someone else. Each moment we have that potential. There's so many, sometimes you can leave flowers for people. I pick up my neighbor's trash. I live on the 4th floor. If I'm going down, I got 2 hands, might as well do it. And now everyone on our floor has started doing this. It's contagious. But my favorite, perhaps one of my recent favorite stories is this woman just a few months ago in Bombay, a 19-year-old. She comes out and she says, with this one smile card changed my life. And I said, how so? She says, I received a smile card because somebody did something kind, and I'm like, what should I do? So she goes to a coffee shop, and she says to the guy behind the counter, says, yeah, this is my tab, but I actually want to pay for the person behind me, whoever the next customer is. And the guy looks at her, it's like, why? Says, well, I just kind of want to do it just because I want to make somebody's day. Is that okay? He's like, all right, if that's what you want to do, just stand out to the side, and whenever they order, I'll come. You can come back in and pay for the tab. So, okay, she does this drill. There's a couple that comes a few minutes later, and this guy who's already kind of confused, he's like, don't ask me why, but your order has been paid for by somebody before you. They want you to have a smile card, and please just pay it forward. Do something nice for someone else. And so now these guys on the receiving end are doubly confused, So they go have their thing, and they have their smile card. They go back to their table, and this 19-year-old comes in, pays, and she goes back. Incidentally, her table is right next to theirs. And she got to hear what happened to their inner ecology. What happened to that couple? The couple's like, oh my God, can you believe there are kind people? And it's like, are you going to do this act, or am I going to do this act? And what are you going to do? And they were like, and the other person's like, can you really still believe there are kind people? And and I think one of them is like, and that too, even in Bombay, So they're going off about this whole dialogue of generosity and starting to brainstorm, and this 19-year-old looked at it and said, wow, I do one small thing, and imagine the transformation that happens in the people over there. She said, I am shifting myself from being a consumer mindset to being a contributor first mindset. That's the first thing of giftivism, is this shift from transaction to trust. A lot of times if we assume that people are selfish, we feel that, oh, they're out to take advantage of us. And if they're out to take advantage of us, let's just be transactional. This is my $5, this is my order, this is going to be my burrito. Everything's me, me, me. But what happens if you start to reframe that into a model of trust? We decided to run a little experiment. It was called Karma Kitchen. We rented a restaurant for one night, one day. And it was going to be all volunteer run. We decided to remove all the staff, and it was going to be all volunteer run. And the check, this was the only difference from a regular restaurant, the check would read 0. It's 0 because someone before you has paid for your meal, and you get to pay forward for people after you. Now, most people look at this, especially economists, right? They scratch their heads. You mean you trust people to pay forward? People just eat and take and not pay forward. Like, why would anyone want to pay forward when they don't have to? You'd be surprised. We said, look, yeah, we don't know if it's going to work. We're just doing it for this one Sunday. If people pay enough, we'll do it the next Sunday. Otherwise, we'll stop, you know? So what if our epitaph reads, hey, here died a bunch of crazy kids trying to be generous? That's okay with us. Right? So we tried it one Sunday. People paid. So we had a second Sunday. We had a third Sunday, fourth Sunday, like that 4 years. Now, in over 6 places around the world, people are trying this, and they're realizing, wow, it kind of works. Imagine a whole restaurant, you go in, and no one is paying for themselves. There's a vibe. The volunteer is smiling, and they're like greeting you. You're not worried. It was the top-rated restaurant in Berkeley where we started this, on Yelp. And why? These are people who didn't have any training in restauranting, but they were feeling connected with each other, and people cared more for love than they cared for the food. It actually makes a huge difference. So this idea of trust is something that a lot of scholars are now studying as well. This is pretty profound. The third shift is from isolation to community. Me gets very isolating. We need to shift from me to we. We is community. We kind of stumbled into this insight, you could say by accident. 15 years ago, my mom, another friend, and I, we decided to do a little experiment in our own homes. We said, let's just sit down and be in silence for an hour, meditate for an hour. In the second hour, we'll share aha moments from our week and just kind of be with each other. In the third hour, my mom says, look, I got to feed you anyways. I'll feed whoever else comes. Right? And we just left the door open. Whoever wanted to come, friends and friends and friends, would come. Over the last 15 years, my mom has fed in our own home more than 40,000 people. There's a wait list of people to come every single week. There's no agenda. We're just here in a circle. Everyone comes up to my mom and says, wow, thank you. Thank you for all this food. You know, thank you for hosting the space. Thank you. And my mom looks at him and says, no, thank you for the opportunity to be of service. And people look at that, and they're kind of confused. Sometimes, you know, some of my buddies will joke around. They'll be like, Auntie, you know, we can give you that opportunity to be of service on Thursdays, too, if you want. And they, bit by bit, start realizing that it isn't giving that you receive. And she was grateful. In 62 cities around the world, people in their homes are starting to host these gatherings. And when they do, everyone asks, so what's the agenda? What's the plan? Did you really want it to get like this and movement? And my parents are, no. We're just trying to, you know, improve ourselves. We're just trying to come in deeper alignment. That's all. There's no agenda. Really, all we want to do is confuse you with gratitude. You leave that door, you leave our door, and you have a little bit more gratitude than when you first came in. And that gratitude has to overflow somewhere in the world. And when it overflows somewhere in the world, wherever that place is, that's our home. That's all we want. So simple, but you can imagine after doing this for 15 years every single Wednesday, just in this one home, you can imagine the kind of community that is created. It's not just people together. It's not a shopping mall where you have people together. It's deep ties. It's not just Facebook friends. It's much deeper ties. That's real community of generosity. And the fourth shift is a shift from scarcity to abundance. This is a photo my wife took a couple weeks back when she was on a hike. These little signs of life where you may not even expect it. Right? So many times we have green-colored goggles and everything looks green. No matter how beautiful the rainbow, we say, oh, that's green, that's green, that's green. We can't see any other color. Even if we do, it's tinted by green because we have those goggles on. But what if we go to each situation and say, what are our gifts? No matter how challenged the situation. One of our volunteers lives in Oakland on the border of 2 gangs, consciously so. And he says, I want to bring change about in Oakland. How are you going to do it? Most people look at that and say, this city is broken, it needs this help, it needs, you know, this kind of funds, these kinds of, you know, new designs and all this kind of stuff. They said, no, we want to go in and we want to generate love and we want to give. But people will say, what do you have to give? There are 31 liquor stores and no grocery stores in this community. How are you going to give? You have so many problems. And he says, well, it's just a matter of taking off those goggles. I'm sure we have gifts. Ended up that they live on a street called Fruitvale. It was called Fruitvale because back in the days they had a lot of fruits, and actually even now. So a whole bunch of them decide to go to the neighbors and say, look, you've got all these oranges and pears, can we just pluck them? And they said, yeah, sure. Now they have oranges, and now they have all this fruit, and even produce, all kinds of vegetables. Then they set up a little shop outside, Fruta Gift. And Fruta Gift is what? Nothing. There's no charge. There's no price. They say, look, it's nature's gift. Nature gave it to us. We just put it together, and we're giving it to you. And in the process, we're coming together. Even gang members, look at this situation. They're coming for the produce. They're like, what's going on? Some of these people have never had a strawberry in their life. This is ultra-local, ultra-organic. People are completely moved, but it's not even the food. It's the relationship. It's the bonds. It's the love that gets generated in between them. In every place, we always have an opportunity to give, but we need to tap into that lens. And then social change takes on a very different trajectory. It's not top-down. It's not helping. It's not fixing because things are broken. It's serving because things are whole. So in summary, the 4 shifts of giftivism, you move from consumption to contribution, transaction to trust, isolation to community, and scarcity to abundance. This is the work of service space. That's essentially what we try to do. We hold space. We hold 3 kinds of spaces. One, I'm not going to do the Kung Fu Panda inner peace. You hold space inside yourself. That's important. You have to be the change. You hold space outside. These are people 2 weeks ago, they all decided to hold little banners that said smile. You go to one intersection, people are like, what's this smile? I don't want to smile. Okay, you smirk. But then you go to a second intersection, there's 4 more people, and you're like, okay, cracking half a smile, and by the third one, you're like full out smiling. You know, you just can't help it. That sounds like a simple thing, but it can actually change a whole community. So this ripples out on the outside, and it ripples out online as well. Can't ignore that now. One of our projects is called Daily Good. DailyGood.org is basically one bit of good news every single day. It's been running for over 15 years. No agenda, no ads, nothing. Purely just a labor of love to spread good in the world. Right? And online spaces allow you to do that. So these are 3 kinds of spaces where we start to create a whole ecosystem of hundreds of thousands of people that say yes to generosity, that say yes to us. It's profound and it's beautiful, but it starts with this question. Right? What happens, what designs emerge if we assume that people want to be selfless, not selfish, want to be other-centered? What happens if we say that people actually want to be like that, not like what economics suggests that people are actually selfish and greedy? That's just a narrative in our head. That's the story we tell ourselves. But what if we assume that people actually, even in their selfish moments, there's a part of them that wants to love, that wants to be selfless, that wants to be connected? What happens? What would happen if we hold space with that question in mind? It all starts with our Kung Fu Panda holding space. Each one of us can be the change inside. That's really where it starts. This is Dennis saying, I travel by cycle. I am the change. This is Madhvi says, I sit with an elderly person every night to listen to their stories. Yes, I am the change. This is Pancho and Adelijah at Occupy Oakland, the first place where there was this altercation between the Occupy movement and the police force. They said they're building up the rhetoric of nonviolence. We're going to build up the rhetoric of nonviolence. We're going to go in there and meditate. This was a photo that spread to millions, was on world news all over the place. And here they are meditating with choppers on their head, media over there, all these people in riot gear. And what are these guys doing? Meditating. They went to jail, and what did their offense read? Disturbing peace. They're holding space. They're holding space in their own way. And this is from last week, 8-year-old Anha from New Jersey. She says, I brought happy tears onto a homeless man's face simply by smiling. Yes, I am the change. We can all be the change, and when we all be the change together, a different kind of intelligence co-creates that's greater than the sum of the parts. What is that? When we don't know what to do, I think this sums it up. Choice A, B, or C, or love. Just choose love. As Martin Luther King said so rightly, everyone can be great because everyone can serve. You don't need a college degree to serve. You don't need to know the second law of thermodynamics to serve. You don't need to have your subject and your verb agree to serve. You just need a heart full of love. You need a soul generated by grace. Thank you.